Imagine a massive Boeing 777 carrying 239 souls, vanishing into thin air in the dead of night. No distress call, no radar signal, no debris field, just silence. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 is not just an aviation mystery. It's one of the greatest unsolved puzzles of the modern world. Families of the missing passengers still await closure, while investigators chase fragments of truth scattered across oceans. But the deeper we look, the stranger this story becomes. Was it a tragic accident? A hijacking? A cover-up? Or something far darker? Tonight we journey into the chilling story of Flight MH370 step by step, scene by scene, tracing the path of one of history's most baffling mysteries. The evening of March 8, 2014, began like any other. Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 prepared for departure at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The flight, a routine overnight journey to Beijing, carried 227 passengers and 12 crew members. Families waved goodbye at the terminal, unaware that this would be the last time they'd ever see their loved ones. The Boeing 777 was considered one of the safest aircraft in the skies, with an excellent track record. Pilots and crew followed standard pre-flight checks and everything seemed normal. The passengers settled in, some preparing to sleep, others watching movies or texting final messages before the plane took off. At 12:41 a.m., MH370 lifted off the runway and began its journey into the night sky. The captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, a seasoned pilot with decades of experience, and his co-pilot, Fariq Abdul Hamid, guided the aircraft smoothly into the air. Their voices were calm and professional as they communicated with air traffic control. "Good night, Malaysian 370, was the final routine message received from the cockpit as the plane transitioned from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace. It was the last time the world would hear from them. Minutes later, the aircraft vanished from civilian radar screens. Air traffic controllers expected a handover signal as the jet entered Vietnamese airspace, but there was nothing, no acknowledgement, no emergency call. Confusion spread in the control room. At first, officials assumed it was a technical glitch, a minor communication error that would quickly resolve. But as time passed, silence deepened into dread. Behind the scenes, military radar later revealed something strange. MH370 had not disappeared instantly. Instead, it had made a sharp turn westward, completely off its intended route, crossing back over Malaysia and heading toward the vast Indian Ocean. The maneuver looked deliberate, almost as if the plane was under someone's control. But the burning question was, who? As the hours ticked by and the plane failed to arrive in Beijing, families waiting at the airport grew frantic. Tearful calls to hotlines went unanswered. Officials scrambled to piece together fragments of information, and confusion gripped two nations. In those first critical hours, one thing was becoming chillingly clear. MH370 had not just disappeared, it had gone rogue, and so began the world's most haunting aviation mystery. The night was only the beginning, but the silence of MH370 would echo louder than any sound. The search that followed would span years, involve multiple nations, and cost hundreds of millions of dollars, but answers remained just out of reach. The world had witnessed airplanes crash before, but never vanish like this. And as the truth began slipping away into the ocean's abyss, theories darker than the night sky began to take hold. As dawn broke on March 8, 2014, the world still had no idea that flight MH370 had slipped into a void of uncertainty. Families in Beijing waited anxiously at the arrival gate, watching the scheduled landing time come and go. Airline staff, usually calm and reassuring, began making panicked phone calls. The arrival board still displayed MH370, but no one could confirm where the aircraft was. Hours passed, and with each minute of silence, the weight of dread pressed down heavier on those waiting. The airline finally admitted the unthinkable. Flight MH370 was missing. But missing how? Missing where? Authorities rushed into action, deploying search and rescue teams to the South China Sea, the area where the plane was last seen on radar. Ships, aircraft, and satellites scanned the waters relentlessly. Everyone assumed the aircraft had crashed somewhere along its original route, but the search turned up nothing. No oil slick, no floating wreckage, no emergency signals. The ocean, vast and unforgiving, gave up no secrets. For a modern plane with advanced tracking systems, to vanish without a trace seemed impossible. And yet, MH370 had done exactly that. Behind the scenes, investigators were uncovering data that the public didn't yet know. Military radar suggested the plane had taken a sharp turn back toward Malaysia, flying across the peninsula at low altitude before heading northwest. This revelation shifted the search area drastically. It meant the initial hours of search had been wasted in the wrong place. The strange course change raised chilling possibilities. Was this a hijacking? Was the pilot in control? Or had some mechanical failure caused the aircraft to veer wildly off course? None of the answers seemed to fit perfectly, and that uncertainty only deepened the mystery, adding to the confusion. The aircraft's transponder, the device that communicates with radar, had been manually switched off. This was no accident. Whoever controlled the cockpit made a deliberate effort to vanish from civilian air traffic control. But the plane's communication system, called SATCOM, still intermittently pinged a satellite operated by Inmarsat. These pings revealed that the plane had continued flying for nearly 7 hours after contact was lost. This detail shocked investigators. If the aircraft had truly crashed, why would it keep sending signals for so long, and where did it go during those hours? The search expanded dramatically, covering a massive arc stretching from Central Asia to the southern Indian Ocean. Countries like Thailand, Vietnam, India, and Australia joined forces in the hunt. Dozens of ships combed the seas and satellites scanned the skies, but the vastness of the area was overwhelming. For every hour that passed, the chance of finding survivors dwindled, and the mystery only grew deeper. The lost hours of MH370 weren't just lost. They were stolen, as if swallowed by the sky itself. Families, desperate for answers, clung to hope. Some believed their loved ones might still be alive, held hostage somewhere. Others feared the worst but wanted closure, a body to bury, a final goodbye. Instead, they were forced into limbo, waiting for news that never came. The lost hours of MH370 became the foundation of conspiracy theories, with each new detail twisting the story into something darker and more unfathomable. What happened in those hours remains one of the greatest enigmas in aviation history. The disappearance of Flight MH370 quickly escalated from a national emergency to a global crisis. Within days, more than a dozen nations became involved in what would become the largest and most expensive search operation in aviation history. The South China Sea, where authorities first believed the plane had gone down, was crowded with ships and aircraft scanning every possible mile. But as new radar data emerged, it became clear that the initial search zone was wrong. The aircraft had not crashed where expected. It had flown on for hours, far from its planned path. The world's attention shifted to an even more baffling mystery. Where exactly was MH370? Satellite data provided by Inmarsat revealed something extraordinary. By analyzing handshake pings between the aircraft and the satellite, investigators plotted 2 possible corridors the plane might have taken, one stretching north toward Central Asia, and another arching south into the remote Indian Ocean. Both scenarios seemed equally unbelievable. If the plane had flown north, it would have crossed multiple countries' airspace without detection. If it had gone south, it would have vanished into one of the most desolate regions of ocean on Earth. Neither path offered comfort or clarity, only more confusion. Governments scrambled to contribute resources. The United States, Australia, China, and many Southeast Asian nations deployed aircraft, satellites, and naval vessels. Australian authorities took a leading role, directing search operations deep into the Indian Ocean. The region was vast, remote, and largely unmapped, making it a daunting challenge. Searching here wasn't like searching for a needle in a haystack. It was like searching for a single drop of water in an endless sea. Yet families and governments alike clung to the hope that something, anything, would be found. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no sign of the missing aircraft. The ocean, vast and indifferent, yielded no debris fields, no floating life vests, no seat cushions, nothing. The silence was haunting. In most plane crashes, debris is located within hours or days, but MH370 was rewriting the rules of aviation disasters. How could a modern aircraft, equipped with sophisticated systems and carrying hundreds of people, vanish so completely in an age of satellites and radar? The very impossibility of it kept the world transfixed. Meanwhile, families of the passengers staged protests and vigils, demanding answers from Malaysia Airlines and their governments. In Beijing, relatives clashed with officials, furious at what they saw as a lack of transparency. In Malaysia, press conferences became tense, with journalists pressing for answers that officials couldn't provide. Every new update seemed to raise more questions than it answered. Conspiracy theories blossomed, fueled by the vacuum of information. Some believed the plane had been hijacked and hidden. Others suspected terrorism. Still others whispered about cover-ups, suggesting governments knew more than they were admitting. The search stretched across borders, involving military assets, satellites, and billions of dollars worth of technology. Yet the deeper investigators looked, the less sense the puzzle seemed to make. MH370 had not just disappeared. It had erased itself, leaving behind a silence so loud it echoed across the world. And as the search dragged on, frustration and suspicion grew. For the families, every day without answers was torture. For investigators, every empty stretch of ocean was a reminder that this was no ordinary case. The search for MH370 was becoming the most haunting manhunt the modern world had ever seen. As the weeks turned into months, the families of MH370's passengers found themselves trapped in a cruel limbo. Every morning they woke with the same hope, that today would bring answers. And every night they went to bed with the same gnawing emptiness. In Beijing, relatives gathered in hotels, holding up pictures of their loved ones and begging for updates. Many believed, deep in their hearts, that the passengers might still be alive, perhaps held hostage somewhere. Others were tormented by the thought that their loved ones were gone but left without a grave to mourn at. For these families, the absence of evidence was more devastating than bad news. It was like grief frozen in time. Protests erupted outside government buildings. In China, families accused authorities of hiding the truth. In Malaysia, relatives demanded to know why it had taken hours before search and rescue operations were mobilized. Anger mixed with sorrow, and sorrow mixed with desperation. Some families even flew to Malaysia to confront officials face-to-face, only to leave with more questions than they arrived with. Airline representatives stood before microphones, struggling to deliver words of comfort, but their vagueness only deepened suspicion. For many families, trust in the system was shattered. The emotional toll was unbearable. Husbands lost wives, parents lost children, children lost parents. In some homes, birthdays passed in silence, anniversaries went uncelebrated, and families left empty chairs at dining tables, hoping against hope that their loved one might still walk through the door. The absence was everywhere. Every phone call unanswered, every knock at the door that wasn't them became a fresh wound. Psychologists called it ambiguous loss, the cruelest form of grief, where there is no body to bury, no closure, and no ending to the nightmare. The media became both a lifeline and a torment for these families. Every news broadcast offered the possibility of an update, but also the risk of false hope. Rumors and unverified theories flooded TV screens and newspapers. One day it was reported the plane had landed safely in Kazakhstan. The next, whispers suggested it had been hijacked and hidden in a jungle. Each new rumor sent waves of emotion crashing through the families, only for disappointment to follow. The cycle of hope and heartbreak left scars deeper than anyone could see. Some families refused to let go. They organized themselves into support groups, pooling resources, hiring independent investigators, and even launching crowdfunding campaigns to keep the search alive when governments began to lose momentum. They became relentless voices reminding the world that behind the headlines were real human lives, 239 of them. These families knew that without pressure, the mystery of MH370 might fade into silence, and they refused to let that happen. Their persistence kept the case alive long after officials grew weary, but the cost was high. Many families fell into financial ruin, unable to work while consumed by grief. Relationships broke under the strain of uncertainty. Mental health spiraled for many, trapped in the endless loop of what-ifs. For the world, MH370 was a mystery. For the families, it was a wound that refused to heal, and as governments shifted their focus elsewhere, the relatives of the missing remained in the shadows, alone with their unanswered questions, still waiting for a knock on the door that would never come. With no wreckage, no black box, and no survivors, speculation about MH370's fate exploded across the globe. In the absence of hard evidence, theories took flight, some plausible, others wild. The most immediate theory was pilot involvement. Investigators scrutinized Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a respected veteran pilot with more than 18,000 hours of flying experience. His home flight simulator was seized, revealing routes similar to the southern Indian Ocean path MH370 may have taken. To some, this suggested Zahari could have deliberately diverted the plane. But supporters insisted he was a professional, devoted family man with no motive to end 239 lives. Another theory centered on hijacking. The deliberate disabling of the plane's transponder pointed to human intervention. Could terrorists have taken over the cockpit? In the post-9/11 world, this seemed possible. Yet no group ever claimed responsibility, and intelligence agencies found no evidence of a coordinated attack. Still, the possibility lingered. Perhaps the hijackers' mission was unfinished, or perhaps it was meant to remain a mystery. The lack of demands or statements only made the idea more baffling. A third theory blamed catastrophic mechanical failure. Could a sudden fire or electrical fault have knocked out communications and incapacitated the crew, leaving the plane to fly on autopilot until it ran out of fuel? This scenario could explain the silence from the cockpit. But critics argued it didn't explain the sharp turns or the deliberate path changes detected by radar. A mechanical failure might cause chaos, but not a controlled redirection across Malaysia. Something or someone was clearly guiding MH370 in those early hours. Then there was the political conspiracy angle. Some speculated the plane carried sensitive cargo or passengers tied to governments or corporations. Could powerful entities have silenced MH370 to cover up secrets? A few even suggested the aircraft was shot down accidentally by a military and the truth hidden to avoid scandal. These theories, while dramatic, thrived because of the void of evidence. Each unanswered question became fuel for speculation, and each delay in the search widened the space for darker possibilities. Some of the most far-fetched ideas gained massive public attention. There were whispers of alien abduction, secret military bases, and even time warps. To skeptics, these theories were absurd. But to grieving families desperate for answers, nothing seemed too far-fetched when the official explanations gave them nothing. The internet magnified every rumor, with forums and YouTube channels dissecting satellite images, blurry photos, and even passenger backgrounds for hidden clues. MH370 wasn't just a missing plane. It had become a global obsession, a canvas onto which the world projected its fears and fantasies. As months passed, one truth became clear: the mystery itself was becoming bigger than the tragedy. People weren't just asking what happened anymore. They were asking, why don't we know? Governments, airlines, and investigators faced mounting criticism for their handling of the case. And in the absence of trust, conspiracy theories thrived. Theories took flight, but answers remained grounded, leaving the world suspended in the eerie silence MH370 left behind. By mid-2014, the focus of the search had shifted almost entirely to the vast emptiness of the southern Indian Ocean. Using satellite data, investigators concluded that MH370 had most likely flown south until it exhausted its fuel and crashed somewhere in this remote stretch of water. But searching this area was unlike any operation in history. The Indian Ocean is one of the harshest, most desolate places on Earth, with powerful currents, unpredictable weather, and depths that plunge to more than 20,000 feet. It was a graveyard large enough to swallow a Boeing 777 whole. Australia took the lead in coordinating the ocean search, joined by ships and aircraft from China, the United States, and several other nations. Sophisticated sonar equipment was deployed to scan the seafloor, while satellites combed the waves from above. For months, vessels dragged equipment across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, mapping the ocean floor in detail never attempted before. The operation was colossal, costing billions, but the ocean seemed determined to keep its secrets. Not a single piece of MH370 was found in the initial search zone. Then, in 2015, more than a year after the disappearance, a breakthrough came. A piece of wreckage, a flaperon from a Boeing 777, washed ashore on Réunion Island, a tiny French territory in the Indian Ocean. The discovery electrified the world. For the first time, there was physical evidence that MH370 had indeed ended in the Southern Ocean. More fragments followed in later years, washing up on coastlines in Madagascar, Mauritius, and Mozambique. Each piece told part of the story, but never the whole. The wreckage confirmed the plane had crashed, but it didn't reveal why or how. The debris raised new questions as well. Some pieces showed signs of damage that experts argued were consistent with a high-speed impact. Others suggested a more controlled ditching into the sea. The conflicting interpretations kept speculation alive. Did the plane run out of fuel and spiral down chaotically, or did someone guide it to the end? Even the wreckage, instead of closing doors, seemed to open new ones. Meanwhile, the search continued underwater. Sonar scans mapped over 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor, uncovering underwater volcanoes, trenches, and shipwrecks, but no trace of the aircraft's fuselage. The scale of failure was staggering. In January 2017, after nearly 3 years, officials announced the suspension of the official search. The ocean had won, at least for the moment. MH370 remained hidden in its watery grave, a reminder that even in the 21st century, parts of our world remain untamed and unknowable. For the families, the discovery of debris brought mixed emotions. Some finally accepted that their loved ones had perished. Others clung even harder to hope, pointing out that no bodies were ever found. For investigators, the debris was a bittersweet clue, enough to prove the plane was gone, but not enough to explain the mystery. And for the world, the search of the Indian Ocean became a haunting metaphor. Billions spent, countless hours dedicated, and still, the truth remained just out of reach. As the investigation deepened, suspicion increasingly turned toward the cockpit. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, the man entrusted with guiding MH370, became a figure of controversy. On one hand, he was admired as a skilled pilot, known for his professionalism and decades of experience. On the other, investigators uncovered unsettling details. His personal flight simulator at home contained data showing practice runs over remote stretches of the Indian Ocean, eerily similar to the path MH370 was believed to have taken. To some, this was damning evidence of a planned suicide mission. To others, it was circumstantial at best, a tragic coincidence being twisted by desperation for answers. Friends and family of Captain Zahari fiercely defended him. They insisted he was not depressed, not reckless, and certainly not suicidal. Colleagues described him as cheerful, generous, and passionate about flying. His daughter spoke out against the accusations, saying investigators were destroying his reputation without proof. Yet shadows lingered. Why had the plane's communication systems been deliberately disabled? Why did MH370 take deliberate turns rather than continuing on autopilot? If it wasn't Zahari, who else could have orchestrated such precision? The co-pilot, Farik Abdul Hamid, also came under scrutiny. At 27, he was young and relatively inexperienced compared to Zahari. He had been preparing for his first-ever flight as a fully qualified first officer. Some questioned whether he could have taken control in a crisis or if he might have made errors. But Farik's background revealed no red flags, no troubling financial issues, no extremist ties, nothing to suggest he had motive or ability to carry out such a plan alone. For many, suspicion still circled back to Zahari, but others argued that focusing on the pilots was too convenient. What if the aircraft had been hijacked after all? With 239 people on board, there were countless possibilities. Could a passenger have stormed the cockpit? Could a stowaway have gained access? Could armed hijackers have forced the crew to comply? The absence of demands, messages, or claims of responsibility made this scenario difficult to support, but not impossible. For those unwilling to believe a respected captain could do such a thing, hijacking remained the most palatable explanation. Governments, too, faced suspicion. Critics accused Malaysia of incompetence in handling the crisis. From delayed responses to confusing press conferences, some claimed crucial information had been withheld, whether intentionally or by negligence. The shifting timelines, contradictory statements, and lack of transparency eroded public trust. Conspiracy theories flourished in this environment, suggesting cover-ups or hidden agendas. Some even pointed fingers at foreign governments, arguing that radar data or satellite images were being deliberately concealed. The truth was that every path of suspicion led to a dead end. Zahari might have been involved, but no proof existed. A hijacking might have occurred, but no group came forward. Governments might have failed, but none admitted to deception. In the shadows of suspicion, everything was possible and nothing was certain. And that uncertainty became the oxygen that kept the mystery of MH370 alive. When the first piece of MH370 wreckage, the Flaperon, was discovered on Reunion Island in July 2015, it marked a turning point in the investigation. After more than a year of silence, The ocean had finally surrendered evidence that the plane had indeed ended its journey in the Indian Ocean. The flaperon was positively identified as belonging to a Boeing 777, and there was only one missing 777 in the world at that time, MH370. For grieving families, it was both a breakthrough and a heartbreak. Proof that their loved ones were gone, but still no answers to why. In the following months and years, more pieces trickled in. Wing fragments, cabin panels, and interior items washed up on the shores of Madagascar, Mozambique, Mauritius, and Tanzania. Each discovery reignited the world's attention. Investigators analyzed the parts for clues, the way they had broken, the condition of the edges, the growth of barnacles and marine life clinging to them. Some experts argued the damage suggested a violent high-speed impact with the water. Others believed the debris indicated a more controlled ditching, with the pilot guiding the plane down until the very end. One haunting clue came from a piece of cabin interior that suggested part of the plane had broken from the inside out, perhaps due to sudden decompression. Another showed marks consistent with water erosion over months of drifting. Yet each fragment was like a puzzle piece without its neighbors, valuable, but not enough to complete the picture. The debris confirmed the aircraft had ended in the ocean, but it revealed nothing about the cause of its disappearance. For families, the arrival of debris on distant shores only deepened their torment. Many demanded to see the wreckage with their own eyes, fearful of government manipulation or cover-ups. Some clung to hope, arguing that if debris was found so far from the official search zone, perhaps the plane had gone down elsewhere entirely. The randomness of the ocean currents made it impossible to know exactly where the fuselage lay. The Indian Ocean, with its swirling, shifting tides, had scattered the plane across thousands of miles. Investigators tried to use drift patterns to narrow down the crash site. Oceanographers studied currents, winds, and seasonal flows to trace where the debris might have originated. Their model suggested a remote stretch of water west of Australia, far from any shipping lanes or islands. Yet even with narrowed coordinates, the area remained enormous, spanning tens of thousands of square kilometers. Searching it was like hunting for a single coin at the bottom of a dark, bottomless well. The debris told the world two things. MH370 had indeed ended in the ocean, and human lives had been lost. But it also told the world what it did not know: why the plane had strayed so far from its path, who had been in control, and what those final hours had looked like inside the cabin. The clues in the debris were real but incomplete, a trail of whispers instead of answers. They were fragments of truth that only made the mystery more unbearable. By early 2017, nearly 3 years after the disappearance of MH370, the official search was declared suspended. After mapping more than 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor, an area larger than many countries, search vessels had found nothing. Not a fuselage, not an engine, not the black boxes that could explain everything. Governments admitted the heartbreaking truth. Despite billions of dollars spent and unprecedented international cooperation, the final resting place of MH370 remained unknown. For many, the decision to abandon the hunt felt like surrender. The announcement devastated families. Protests erupted again as relatives accused authorities of giving up too soon. They argued that with new technology and fresh data, the search could continue. Some accused governments of prioritizing money over human lives, abandoning 239 souls to the deep. For them, halting the search wasn't just a failure of resources, it was a betrayal. Their loved ones had vanished on an airline flight, and they believed the world owed them answers. Public trust, already fragile, crumbled further. Many felt governments knew more than they were admitting. The secrecy around radar data, the conflicting timelines, the endless no comments at press conferences, these all fueled suspicion that something was being hidden. Some believed the plane had been shot down accidentally and covered up. Others thought it had landed secretly at a military base. With no official answers, conspiracy theories thrived in the vacuum. The end of the search only deepened the shadows surrounding the case, yet hope refused to die. In 2018, a private U.S. company named Ocean Infinity launched a new search, funded on a no-find, no-fee basis. Using advanced underwater drones, they scoured tens of thousands of square kilometers, covering more ground in months than previous efforts had in years. The operation gave families fresh hope. But by May 2018, even this renewed effort ended in failure. The ocean had swallowed MH370 whole, and it wasn't ready to give it back. For investigators, the lack of wreckage raised haunting possibilities. If the plane had spiraled into the sea at high speed, debris might be scattered across an area too vast to find. If it had ditched in a controlled manner, it could have sunk almost intact, vanishing beneath the waves without leaving a large debris field. Both scenarios were possible, but neither could be proven. The black boxes, which might still hold their secrets at the bottom of the ocean, remained out of reach, silent witnesses in a watery grave. For the world, the suspension of the search felt like the end of a story without an ending. Planes aren't supposed to vanish in the modern era. Satellites track our every move, radars scan the skies, and yet one of the largest passenger aircraft in history had slipped through the cracks. The search abandoned was not just the failure to find a plane, it was the failure of certainty itself. And in that uncertainty, MH370 transformed from a tragedy into a legend, an unsolved mystery that continues to haunt the skies. The disappearance of MH370 left scars not only on the families but on the world of aviation itself. For decades, commercial flight had been regarded as one of the safest modes of travel, with advanced systems making crashes increasingly rare. But MH370 shattered that illusion. If a massive Boeing 777 could vanish in the modern era, tracked by satellites and monitored by radars, then what else was possible? The event exposed vulnerabilities in global aviation, gaps in communication systems, and the fragility of international cooperation. It was a wake-up call that the skies, as safe as they seemed, were not immune to the unknown. In response to the tragedy, international aviation authorities implemented changes. Airlines began adopting systems that automatically transmit an aircraft's position every few minutes, making it far harder for a plane to disappear unnoticed. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, also mandated improvements in black box technology, requiring longer-lasting locator beacons and, eventually, real-time data streaming. These reforms were born from tragedy, ensuring that future flights would not vanish as MH370 did. But for the families of the lost, such measures were small comfort, arriving too late for the 239 who were gone. The legacy of MH370 also lives on in culture. Documentaries, books, and films have tried to capture the mystery, each offering their own interpretations. Some lean toward science and investigation, others toward conspiracy and speculation. The story resonates because it touches something primal in us: the fear of the unknown, the dread of vanishing without a trace. MH370 became more than a plane crash. It became a symbol of how fragile our sense of control really is. In a world where we believe everything can be tracked, explained, and solved, MH370 is the reminder that some mysteries defy answers. For the families, the legacy is much more personal. Every anniversary reopens wounds. Memorials are held, candles lit, names read aloud, but the absence is louder than any ceremony. Some families continue to fight for renewed searches, refusing to accept that the story is over. Others have tried, painfully, to move on, building new lives while carrying the weight of unanswered questions. Their grief is not just for the loss of loved ones, but for the loss of certainty, of truth, of closure. For investigators, the legacy is one of humility. The oceans remain vast and unyielding, and human knowledge, however advanced, is still limited. MH370 revealed the arrogance of assuming technology can conquer all mysteries. Sometimes nature still holds the upper hand. The case has become a haunting study for aviation experts, not just in what went wrong, but in what was never found. It is a riddle carved into the sky and the sea, one that still resists being solved. And so, MH370 lives on in silence. The passengers, the crew, the aircraft itself, all gone, yet never fully gone, their absence felt in every unanswered question. The mystery endures, both terrifying and fascinating, a wound and a legend. Some believe the truth will surface one day, when technology advances further, or when the ocean finally gives up its secret. Others believe we may never know. Until then, MH370 remains a ghost flight, drifting in our collective memory, a story unfinished. And that brings us to the chilling end of tonight's story, the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, a modern aircraft, hundreds of lives, and yet nothing but fragments left behind. Was it a tragic accident, a deliberate act, or something far more sinister? The truth remains hidden beneath the waves, a mystery that continues to haunt aviation to this very day. What do you think really happened to MH370? Was it pilot suicide, hijacking, or a massive cover-up? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold mysteries from around the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest mysteries are the ones without answers.